My name is Rachel, and at 26 years old, I never imagined I'd be throwing dirt on my mother's casket one day and finding her humming in our kitchen the next. For months, she'd been just the quiet librarian who worried too much about my career and called every Sunday without fail. But when I walked through our front door after her funeral and heard Moon River drifting from the kitchen, I realized that the woman who raised me had been living a double life more dangerous than anything I could have ever imagined. The moment she looked up from her casserole and said, "Perfect timing, sweetheart," is burned into my memory forever. If you're watching this video right now, I'd love to know where you're from. Drop it in the comment section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this. The funeral parlor smelled of lilies and disinfectant, a combination that made my stomach churn. I sat in the front row, staring at the mahogany casket draped with white roses, trying to make sense of how quickly everything had unraveled. 3 weeks ago, Mom had been complaining about her back pain. 2 weeks ago, she was in the hospital with what doctors called sudden onset complications. Last week, she was gone. The minister's voice droned on about eternal rest and God's plan, but his words felt hollow against the weight pressing down on my chest. I glanced around at the sparse gathering. Maybe 30 people total. For someone who had lived 54 years, it seemed like such a small crowd. Aunt Linda sat beside me, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, occasionally shooting disapproving glances my way. "She would have wanted you to wear something nicer, Rachel," she had whispered earlier, eyeing my black dress with obvious disdain. As if I could forget. As if the past 3 weeks hadn't been a blur of hospital visits, insurance calls, and funeral arrangements that I somehow became solely responsible for. Dad had called once from Phoenix, offering hollow condolences and excuses about why he couldn't make the trip. I tuned back into the service as Mrs. Patterson from next door stepped up to the podium. She spoke about Mom's garden, how she always shared her tomatoes, how she'd help carry groceries for the elderly couple across the street. Normal things that felt impossibly distant from the sterile hospital room where I'd watched machines breathe for her. "And she was so proud of Rachel," Mrs. Patterson continued. "Always talking about her daughter's job at the marketing firm, how smart she was, how independent." Independent. That's what Mom had called it when I moved out at 22. Independent when I only called once a week. Independent when I was too busy to visit for Christmas last year. The service concluded with a hymn I didn't recognize. As people filed past the casket to pay their respects, I noticed something that had been nagging at me all morning. The casket was sealed. I had asked about it earlier, and the funeral director, Mr. Henley, had given me a vague explanation about the condition of the body and family preferences. But I hadn't made that preference. "It's better this way, honey," Aunt Linda had said when I questioned it. Remember her how she was. But that was just it, I was having trouble remembering how she was. The last few weeks had been such chaos that my memories of healthy, vibrant Mom felt like they belonged to someone else's life. As the crowd thinned, I found myself standing alone beside the casket. The funeral director approached with practiced sympathy. "Miss Thompson, we'll take care of everything from here. The burial is scheduled for tomorrow morning, family only, as you requested." Had I requested that? The past few weeks were such a blur that I honestly couldn't remember. Everything had happened so fast. Mom's sudden decline, the rushed hospital stays, the quick funeral arrangements. I was gathering my purse to leave when old Mr. Chin from down the street touched my elbow gently. "Rachel, I'm so sorry for your loss," he said. "But I have to ask, I could have sworn I saw your mother yesterday morning, working in her garden."
Was that?
My blood chilled. "Yesterday? That's impossible, Mr. Chin. She's been gone for a week." He looked confused, glancing between me and the casket.
Oh.
I must have been mistaken. Sometimes us old folks, we see what we want to see, you know? But his expression remained troubled as he walked away. The drive home took 45 minutes through winding country roads. Mom's house sat at the end of Maple Street, a modest 2-story colonial with the blue shutters she'd painted herself 2 summers ago. The garden Mr. Chun had mentioned was indeed pristine, which struck me as odd. Who had been maintaining it? I sat in the driveway for several minutes, staring at the house. 3 weeks ago, I'd been here for Sunday dinner, listening to Mom complain about her new neighbor's loud music. She'd seemed perfectly healthy then, maybe a little tired, but nothing that suggested she was about to die. I unlocked the front door, steeling myself for the wave of memories. The house smelled like vanilla and lavender, Mom's signature combination from the candles she burned constantly. I expected silence, expected the hollow feeling of a home without its heart. Instead, I heard humming. My keys slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor. The humming continued from the kitchen. Moon River, Mom's favorite song. The song she used to sing while cooking dinner when I was little. I stood frozen in the entryway, my rational mind cataloging possibilities. A radio left on. The neighbor's music. Stress-induced hallucinations. Anything except the impossible explanation that was slowly crystallizing in my chest like ice. The humming stopped. Footsteps approached from the kitchen, familiar and light. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand there as my mother rounded the corner, wiping her hands on her favorite apron, the one with tiny blue flowers that I'd bought her for Mother's Day 3 years ago. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her face lighting up with surprise and pleasure. "I didn't hear you come in. Perfect timing. I just put a casserole in the oven." She looked exactly as she always had. Same graying brown hair pulled back in a loose bun, same laugh lines around her green eyes, same small scar on her chin from when she'd fallen off her bike as a child. She was wearing her favorite blue cardigan and the pearl earrings Dad had given her for their 10th anniversary. My legs gave out. I sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, staring at her while my mind reeled through explanations and came up empty. "Mom." The word came out as barely a whisper. "What's wrong, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." She laughed at her own joke, then noticed my black dress and the shell-shocked expression on my face. "Oh my goodness, what happened? Why are you dressed like that?" "We buried you." The words tumbled out without permission. "Mom, we just buried you. I was at your funeral. You died. You were in the hospital, and you died, and I planned your funeral, and we buried you today." Her face went through a series of expressions, confusion, concern, and something that might have been fear. "Honey, what are you talking about? I've been right here. I've been fine. I don't know anything about a hospital or—" She trailed off, her hand going to her throat in a gesture I remembered from childhood. I struggled to my feet, my legs still shaky. "This is impossible. You can't be here. You're dead." I watched them close the casket. I picked out the flowers. I wrote your obituary. Mom stepped closer, her hands extended as if to comfort me, but I flinched backward. If this was a hallucination brought on by grief, I couldn't let myself sink into it. "Rachel, sweetheart, come sit down. Let me make you some tea. You're obviously upset about something, but I promise you I'm fine. I'm here. I'm alive." She reached out and gently touched my cheek, her hand warm and real and impossibly familiar. The touch broke something inside me. I grabbed her hand, feeling the callus on her thumb from years of gardening, the slight tremor she developed in the past year, the wedding ring she'd never taken off despite Dad's departure. She was solid, warm, breathing. Her pulse thrummed steadily under my fingers when I pressed them to her wrist. "I don't understand," I whispered. "If you're here, who did we bury? What happened at the hospital? Where have you been?" A shadow passed over her face, there and gone so quickly, I almost missed it. I'm not sure what you think happened, but I've been here. I've been fine. Maybe you had a nightmare? Sometimes grief can make us imagine terrible things." "Grief? Grief over what?" She hesitated. "Well, I know you've been stressed lately. Your job, living alone in the city. Sometimes stress can—" My phone buzzed with a text message. Then another. And another. I pulled it from my purse with trembling hands and saw a stream of condolence messages from coworkers, college friends, distant relatives. "So sorry for your loss, Rachel. Your mom was a wonderful woman. Thinking of you during this difficult time. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to call." I showed the phone to Mom, whose face went pale as she read the messages. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are people saying these things?" "Because you're dead." The words came out louder than I intended, echoing off the walls of the quiet house. You died a week ago. I've been planning your funeral. I picked out your casket. I wrote your eulogy. The whole town thinks you're dead because you are dead. Mom sank onto the couch, her hand pressed to her chest. For a moment, she looked fragile and confused, nothing like the confident woman who had raised me. Rachel, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I don't know what happened, but I'm alive. I'm here. And she paused, looking around the room as if checking for listeners. You can't tell anyone I'm here. Not yet. What do you mean, not yet? I mean exactly what I said. You cannot tell anyone that you've seen me or that I'm alive. Promise me, Rachel. I'm not promising anything until you tell me what's going on. If you're alive, why did I bury someone today? Why have I been grieving for a week? Why is there a death certificate with your name on it? She stood up abruptly, moving to the window and peering through the curtains. Because there are things you don't know. Things I couldn't tell you before, and things I'm still not sure I can tell you now. Try me. She turned back to me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. Rachel, if certain people knew I was alive, it would put both of us in danger. I need you to trust me on this, just for a little while longer. Trust you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, I don't even know if you're real right now. I don't know if I'm having a breakdown or if this is some kind of elaborate joke or if... I stopped, struck by a horrible thought. Did you fake your own death? The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications. Finally, she whispered, It's complicated. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that I'd put up when I was 12, listening to the familiar sounds of Mom moving around downstairs. The soft padding of her slippers. The whistle of the kettle. The gentle clink of a spoon against ceramic. All sounds that should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like evidence in a case I couldn't solve. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the sealed casket, heard the minister's words about eternal rest, felt the weight of the funeral program in my hands. But downstairs, my supposedly dead mother was making her nightly cup of tea. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and crept downstairs. The kitchen was empty, but a mug sat in the sink, still warm. I found Mom in the living room, curled up in her favorite chair with an Afghan pulled around her shoulders, staring out the window at the empty street. Can't sleep either? I asked softly. She startled, then relaxed when she saw me. I keep thinking someone's going to come, she said without taking her eyes off the window. I keep listening for cars that don't belong. I settled onto the couch, tucking my legs under me. Mom, you have to tell me what's going on. I spent today accepting condolences from people who think you're dead. My boss gave me bereavement leave. The bank is asking about your accounts. I'm supposed to be planning what to do with this house. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. There are some things that happened over the past year. Things I got involved in that I probably shouldn't have. What kind of things? I can't tell you everything.
Not yet.
But I need you to know that if I could have done this differently, I would have. The last thing I wanted was to put you through this kind of pain. Frustration bubbled up in my chest. Put me through what kind of pain? Thinking you were dead? Planning your funeral? Hating myself for not being a better daughter. She flinched as if I'd struck her. Rachel. No, let me finish. Do you have any idea what the past week has been like? I've been drowning in guilt, thinking about every fight we ever had, every time I was too busy to call, every holiday I missed. I thought I'd lost my chance to tell you things, important things. What things? She asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. For moving away, for not calling enough, for always being too busy when you needed help, for not being here when you were sick. But you are here now, she said gently. And I'm not sick. Whatever happened at the hospital, whatever paperwork was filed, I'm fine. Are you, though? I studied her face in the dim light. There were new lines around her eyes, and she seemed thinner than I remembered. You look different. Tired. She pulled the Afghan tighter around herself. It's been a stressful time. For how long? When did all this start? Again, that long pause. A few months ago. Maybe longer. It's hard to say exactly when it began. I thought back to our recent conversations, trying to pinpoint when things had started to feel off. You've been different on the phone lately. Distracted. And you canceled our last few Sunday dinners. I had things to take care of. What things, Mom? You keep saying you can't tell me, but I think I deserve some answers. She was quiet again, staring out at the street. Finally, she said, "There are people who wanted me gone. Making them think I was dead seemed like the safest option." What people? Why would anyone want to hurt you? I saw something I shouldn't have seen. I knew something I wasn't supposed to know. About what? I can't. You can't tell me. I finished her sentence with more bitterness than I intended.
Right.
So what am I supposed to do, Mom? Everyone thinks you're dead. I have a job to get back to, a life to live. How long am I supposed to keep this secret? I don't know, she admitted. I'm still figuring things out. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day going through the documents from the past week, looking for inconsistencies. The death certificate looked official, but when I examined it closely, I noticed it had been filed unusually quickly. The cause of death was listed as complications from illness, which seemed vague for a legal document. The hospital records were even stranger. According to the paperwork, Mom had been admitted for severe pneumonia that had progressed rapidly. But I remembered visiting her, and while she had been sick, it hadn't seemed life-threatening. The timeline was compressed: admission on Monday, death on Wednesday. I called the hospital, claiming I needed copies of her medical records for insurance purposes. The woman on the phone put me on hold for an unusually long time, then came back with apologies about a system error that was preventing her from accessing the files. No one called back. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was my best friend Laura, who had driven up from the city for the funeral. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked. I glanced toward the kitchen, where I could hear Mom humming again. It's been complicated. I can imagine. Listen, my mom ran into your Aunt Linda at the grocery store. She said something about you needing to start going through your mom's things soon. I can drive up this weekend to help if you want. The offer was kind, but it sent panic shooting through my chest. Laura couldn't come here. Not with Mom alive and hiding in the kitchen. Actually, that's okay. I'm not ready for that yet. Are you sure? I know how hard it is to face that stuff alone. I'm sure. I just need some time. There was a pause. Rachel, are you really okay? You sound strange.
I've fine.
Just tired. The funeral was draining. After I hung up, I found Mom in the living room, pretending to read a book. But I could tell she'd been listening from the way she didn't look up when I entered. How long is this going to go on? I asked. What do you mean? The hiding. The lying to everyone I know. My friend wants to help me clean out your things. My aunt is asking when I'm going to put the house on the market. I can't keep this up indefinitely. She finally looked at me, and I saw that same flash of fear from the night before. I know it's hard, but I need you to trust me just a little longer. Trust you to do what? Fix whatever mess you've gotten yourself into? I know. Her voice was small. I know what I've put you through, and I'm sorry. But if you tell anyone I'm alive before it's safe.
What?
What will happen? She didn't answer, just returned to staring at her book. That evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner when someone knocked on the front door. Mom immediately tensed, pressing herself against the wall where she couldn't be seen from the windows. Are you expecting anyone? I whispered. She shook her head, her face pale. I went to the door and peered through the peephole. A man in an expensive-looking suit stood on the porch, holding a briefcase. He was maybe 40, with carefully styled hair and the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. I opened the door, but kept the chain latch engaged. Can I help you? Miss Thompson? I'm David Sterling from Comprehensive Insurance Services. I'm so sorry for your loss. I was hoping to speak with you about finalizing some details regarding your mother's life insurance policy. Something about him set my teeth on edge. I thought all the insurance matters were handled through the funeral home. Most of them were, but there are a few loose ends we need to tie up. May I come in? I glanced back toward the kitchen. Actually, this isn't a good time. Can you leave your card? His smile flickered slightly. I understand this is a difficult time, but these matters are time-sensitive. The sooner we can get everything resolved, the sooner you can receive your benefits. What benefits? Your mother had a substantial life insurance policy. But there are some questions about the circumstances of her death that need to be clarified before we can process the claim. My heart started racing. What kind of questions? Nothing serious, just routine verification procedures. For instance, we need to confirm that you are living alone here, that there are no other family members who might have a claim to the policy. The question struck me as odd. Why would it matter if I lived alone? I think I'd prefer to handle this through my lawyer. His expression hardened slightly. Miss Thompson, I'm trying to help you here. These policies can be complicated, and delays often result in complications. It would be much easier if we could just have a quick conversation. I was about to close the door when he added, I should mention that our investigation has turned up some inconsistencies in the medical records. The word investigation sent chills down my spine. I'm sorry, but I really do need to handle this through proper channels. Of course. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small notepad. Could I just get confirmation of a few basic facts? For instance, when did you last see your mother alive? The question felt like a trap. I think we're done here, I said, and started to close the door. He put his foot in the gap before I could shut it completely. Miss Thompson, I really think it would be in your best interest to cooperate with our investigation. Get your foot out of my door, or I'm calling the police. For a moment, we stared at each other. Then he smiled that cold smile again and stepped back. Of course. I'm sorry if I seemed pushy. He handed me a plain white business card with minimal information, just his name and a phone number. I'll be in touch soon. I watched him walk to his car, a dark sedan with tinted windows, and drive away before I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. When I turned around, Mom was standing in the hallway, her face white as paper. Who was that? She whispered. I handed her the business card. She stared at it for a long moment, then walked to the kitchen and tossed it in the trash. Mom, what aren't you telling me? That man wasn't really from an insurance company, was he? She leaned against the counter, suddenly looking every one of her 54 years. Rachel, I need to tell you something, but I need you to promise me you won't panic. I think it's a little late for that. Over the past year, I've been involved in something. Something that started out innocent but became complicated. There are people who would prefer that certain information never comes to light. What information? I can't tell you everything. Not yet. But those people have been watching me, watching this house. They know you're here. How do you know? She walked to the kitchen window and pointed to the street. See that blue car parked 3 houses down? It's been there for 2 days. Different cars, but always someone watching. I looked where she was pointing and felt my stomach drop. There was indeed a blue sedan parked on the street, and I could just make out the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat. Mom, what did you do? I tried to do the right thing, she said quietly. And now I'm not sure there's any way out that doesn't put both of us in danger. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the insurance investigator's questions. I waited until Mom had gone to bed, then crept into her study and started going through her desk drawers. Most of them were unlocked and contained the usual assortment of bills and correspondence. But the bottom drawer on the right side was locked. I searched for the key, checking her jewelry box, the kitchen junk drawer, and the small dish on her dresser. Then I remembered that she sometimes hid important things in an old coffee can in the pantry. The can was there, pushed behind a box of cereal. Inside, along with some emergency cash and her spare car keys, was a small brass key. It fit the locked drawer. Inside, I found a collection of documents that made no sense in the context of my mother's quiet, ordinary life. There were photocopies of what looked like financial records, corporate documents with names I didn't recognize, and amounts that made my eyes widen. There were printed emails between people I'd never heard of, discussing transfers and contingencies and securing loose ends. At the bottom of the pile was a manila envelope marked "Confidential" in red letters. Inside were several documents that made my blood run cold. The first was a passport with Mom's photo but a different name, Margaret Collins. The second was a birth certificate for Margaret Collins. The third was a driver's license for Margaret Collins. The fourth was a bank statement for an account in the Cayman Islands in the name of Margaret Collins, with a balance that had more zeros than I could process. I confronted Mom at breakfast, spreading the documents across the kitchen table like playing cards in a game I didn't understand the rules to. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, resignation, before settling into something that looked almost like relief. "I was wondering when you'd find those," she said quietly, setting down her coffee mug with hands that trembled slightly. "Who is Margaret Collins?" "She's a version of me. A version I created when I needed to be someone else." "That's not an answer, Mom." I picked up the bank statement, the numbers swimming before my eyes. "This account has over $2 million in it. Where did this money come from?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents as if they might disappear if she looked hard enough. Finally, she said, "I was a whistleblower." "A what?" "Last year, I discovered something at work. Something that could hurt a lot of people if it came to light." I frowned. "You work part-time at the library, Mom. What could you possibly have discovered there?" "Not at the library. At my other job." "What other job?" She sighed, suddenly looking older than her 54 years. "For the past 3 years, I've been doing bookkeeping for a company called Meridian Consulting. Freelance work, mostly from home. They said they needed someone discreet, someone who could work independently without asking too many questions." I thought back over the past few years, trying to remember any mention of this job. "You never told me about any consulting work." "Because I signed non-disclosure agreements. The work was supposed to be confidential. Now I understand why." "What kind of work were you doing?" "Financial record keeping, processing payments, maintaining client accounts." It seemed legitimate at first. Corporate consulting fees, contractor payments, normal business expenses. She paused, her hands clenched in her lap. But over time, I started noticing patterns. Money moving in strange ways, payments to shell companies that didn't seem to exist, transactions that didn't match the documentation. "What kind of transactions?" "Large ones. Millions of dollars moving between accounts with no clear business purpose." When I tried to research some of the companies involved, I found empty offices and disconnected phone numbers. I studied the photocopied documents again, trying to make sense of the corporate names and account numbers. "So, you think it was money laundering?" "I think it was worse than that." She got up and paced to the window, peering through the curtains. "I think Meridian was being used to funnel money from government contracts to private accounts. Military contracts, specifically." The words hit me like cold water. "You're saying they were stealing from the military?" "I'm saying someone was using Meridian to redirect contract payments that were supposed to go to legitimate defense contractors. Millions of dollars that should have been used for equipment, training, supplies, it was all being siphoned off into private accounts." I thought about the insurance investigator's questions, his mention of inconsistencies in Mom's medical records. "And you reported this?" I tried to. I contacted the FBI, gave them copies of everything I'd found. They told me they'd investigate, but weeks went by with no word. Then I started noticing cars parked outside the house. Phone calls that would disconnect when I answered. My computer was hacked twice. "So you faked your own death?" "Not exactly." She returned to the table, sitting across from me with her hands folded. "The death was real, as far as the paperwork is concerned. But it wasn't my idea." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What do you mean?" 3 weeks ago, I got a call from someone who claimed to be with the FBI. He said my life was in danger, that the people I'd reported were onto me, and that the only way to keep me safe was to fake my death and put me in protective custody. "Protective custody?" "Mom, where have you been for the past week?" "A safe house in Virginia. They told me it would be temporary, just until they could arrest the people involved in the fraud. They said once the investigation was complete, I could come back and resume my normal life." I stared at her, pieces of the puzzle slowly clicking into place. "But you came back early." "Because I started to suspect that the people who were protecting me might not be who they claimed to be." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The safe house felt more like a prison. I wasn't allowed to contact anyone, wasn't allowed to leave, wasn't even allowed to know where I was. When I asked questions, they told me it was for my own safety. How did you get away? I escaped 3 days ago. Slipped out through a bathroom window while they thought I was sleeping. I've been hiding here since then, trying to figure out who I can trust. I thought about the man who had come to the door yesterday. Mom, I think someone knows you're here. Her face went pale. What do you mean? I told her about the insurance investigator, his strange questions about whether I lived alone, his mention of inconsistencies in the medical records. As I spoke, I watched her expression grow increasingly frightened. He wasn't from any insurance company, she said when I finished. He was checking to see if I'd made contact with you. How do you know? Because there is no life insurance policy. I never had one. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Then what was he really after? Information. Confirmation that I'm alive and that you know about it. I thought about the cars she'd pointed out, the watchers she claimed had been monitoring the house. What do they want from you? The same thing they wanted when they put me in that safe house. To make sure I can't testify about what I found. But you already gave everything to the FBI. She shook her head sadly. I thought I did, but I kept copies of everything as insurance, in case something happened to me. The people at Meridian knew I had those copies, and they knew I was smart enough to hide them somewhere safe. I looked around the kitchen, suddenly seeing our family home in a different light. They're hidden here?
Some of them.
Others are in safety deposit boxes, with instructions to be sent to major newspapers if anything happens to me. Like faking your death? Exactly. She reached across the table and took my hand. Rachel, I'm sorry I dragged you into this. But now that you know, you're in danger too. These people don't leave loose ends. As if summoned by her words, we heard the sound of a car engine outside. Mom immediately went to the window and peered through the curtains, her face going white. They're here, she whispered. 2 men in a black SUV. They're just sitting there, watching the house. I joined her at the window and saw exactly what she described. The SUV was parked across the street, its tinted windows making it impossible to see inside, but I could sense the malevolent attention focused on our house. What do? I asked. We act normal. We don't let them know that we know they're there. But her voice was shaking, and I could see the fear in her eyes. And tonight, when it's dark, we figure out how to get out of here. The rest of the day passed in a surreal haze of forced normalcy. Mom cooked lunch as if nothing had happened, humming the same tune I'd heard when I first found her. I tried to read a book, but my eyes kept drifting to the window, checking to see if the SUV was still there.
It was.
As evening approached, the weight of our situation settled on me like a heavy blanket. My mother, who I'd buried just 2 days ago, was alive but in hiding from people who wanted her dead. I was now an accomplice in her deception, and according to her, that made me a target too. The phone rang, making us both jump. The caller ID showed Aunt Linda's number. Don't answer it, Mom whispered urgently. But I was already reaching for the phone. If I didn't answer, Linda would just keep calling, and eventually she might drive over to check on me.
Oh, Linda.
Rachel, honey, how are you holding up?
I'm okay.
Just tired. I can imagine. Listen, I know this is difficult, but we need to start making some decisions about your mother's things. The house, her belongings. I could come over this weekend and help you start sorting through everything. I glanced at Mom, who was shaking her head frantically. Actually, I'm not ready for that yet. I need some time. Of course, dear. But you can't put it off forever. There are practical matters to consider. The mortgage, utilities, all of that. I know. I just need a few more days. Well, all right. But Rachel, if you need anything at all, you call me, okay? You don't have to go through this alone. After I hung up, Mom and I sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, she said, we can't stay here much longer. Too many people are going to start asking questions. Where would we go? I don't know yet, but I have some resources, some connections. People who might be able to help us. What kind of people? The kind who understand what it's like to be hunted. As darkness fell, the black SUV finally drove away, but neither of us felt any relief. We both knew it would be back, and next time, the people inside might not be content to just watch and wait. Late that night, as I lay in bed listening to the old house settle around us, I thought about how drastically my life had changed in just 2 days. I'd gone from being a grieving daughter to being an accomplice in a conspiracy I barely understood. But as terrifying as the situation was, there was one thing I was certain of. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to lose my mother again. Not when I'd just gotten her back from the dead. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of glass breaking. I lay perfectly still in my childhood bed, heart hammering against my ribs, straining to hear over the blood rushing in my ears. The house had fallen into that deep nighttime quiet that made every sound feel amplified, but now there were new noises, careful footsteps, the soft creak of floorboards, hushed voices. Someone was in the house. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor, and crept to my bedroom door. Through the gap underneath, I could see the faint sweep of flashlight beams moving across the hallway walls. At least 2 people, maybe more. Mom's room was across the hall. I needed to warn her, but getting there meant crossing an open space where I could be seen. I took a deep breath and darted across the hallway, pressing myself against her door before slowly turning the handle. She was already awake, sitting up in bed with her eyes wide with terror. When she saw me, she pressed a finger to her lips and pointed toward the window. I could hear the intruders downstairs now, their voices low but urgent. "Upstairs," one of them said. "Check every room." Mom was already moving, pulling on clothes with practiced efficiency. From under her mattress, she retrieved a small black phone I'd never seen before. Not her regular cell phone, but something that looked more sophisticated, more official. She pressed a few buttons and held it to her ear. When someone answered, she whispered just 4 words. "Mockingbird is compromised. Extract." The response was immediate and brief. She ended the call and grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the window. "We have to go.
Now."
Who was that? Someone who can help us. But only if we get out of here alive. The window in Mom's room faced the backyard. She opened it carefully, wincing as the old frame creaked. Below us was the slanted roof of the back porch, then a 10-foot drop to the garden. Not ideal, but better than facing whoever was coming up the stairs. "I haven't done this since I was 16, Mom whispered as she swung her leg over the windowsill. "You snuck out when you were 16? Despite everything, she almost smiled. How do you think I met your father?" We made it onto the porch roof, just as footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Mom went first, lowering herself to the edge of the roof and dropping into her prize-winning tomato plants. I followed, landing hard and rolling my ankle, but there was no time to assess the damage. "This way," Mom whispered, leading me toward the back fence. Behind us, lights were coming on throughout the house as the intruders searched each room. It wouldn't be long before they realized we were gone and started looking outside. We reached the fence just as I heard someone shout from Mom's bedroom window. "They're not here. Check the perimeter." The fence between our yard and the Johnsons was 6 feet tall, wooden and solid. Mom boosted me up first, then I reached down to help pull her over. We landed in the Johnsons' perfectly manicured backyard, their motion sensor security light flooding the area with harsh, white illumination. "So much for stealth," I muttered. We ran through 3 more backyards, jumping fences and dodging garden ornaments, before emerging onto Elm Street 2 blocks from our house. Mom was breathing hard, and I could see the strain on her face. Whatever she'd been through in that safe house, it had taken a toll on her. "Where are we going?" I asked as we hurried down the sidewalk, staying in the shadows between streetlights. "There's a 24-hour laundromat on Main Street. We can wait there while help comes." "Help from who?" "People I used to work with. People who understand what we're dealing with." The laundromat was a relic from the 1980s, all flickering fluorescent lights and mismatched washing machines. At this hour, it was empty except for an elderly man in the corner folding what looked like an enormous amount of laundry. Mom fed quarters into a machine and started a load of towels from the communal basket, trying to look like a normal person doing late-night laundry instead of a woman fleeing for her life. I sat on one of the plastic chairs, my ankle throbbing, and watched the street through the large front windows. Mom, you said you used to work with these people. What kind of work? She sat beside me, her eyes never leaving the window. The kind where you can't put it on a resume. That's not an answer. Rachel, there are things about my life that I never told you because I wanted to protect you from them. I worked for the government for a while, in a capacity that required certain skills. What kind of skills? The kind that help you disappear when you need to. Before I could ask another question, a black SUV cruised slowly past the laundromat. We both tensed, but it continued down the street without stopping. A few minutes later, it came back from the other direction, moving even more slowly. They're looking for us, Mom whispered. How did they find us so fast? Because they're professionals, and this is a small town. There are only so many places we could have gone. The SUV passed a third time, and this time it pulled into the parking lot of the diner across the street. Two men got out, both wearing dark suits despite the late hour. One of them was the insurance investigator who had come to our door. That's him, I said. The man who came to the house. Mom's face went white. David Sterling. I should have known. You know him?
He worked for Meridian.
He was one of the people I trusted with the evidence I'd found. She closed her eyes, the betrayal evident on her face. He's the one who arranged for my protection. The pieces clicked into place. He's the one who put you in that safe house. And now he's here to finish what he started. Across the street, Sterling was on his phone, pointing in different directions as he spoke. His partner was scanning the street methodically, checking every storefront, every parked car. We can't stay here, Mom said. But as we stood to leave, Sterling's partner pointed directly at the laundromat. They had spotted us. Back exit, Mom said urgently. We hurried toward the rear of the building, but as we reached the back door, we heard car doors slamming in the parking lot behind the laundromat. They had split up, covering both exits. Bathroom, Mom said.
Now.
The bathroom was small, dingy, and had a window high on the back wall. Mom climbed onto the toilet seat and tried to open it, but it was painted shut. Rachel, I need you to listen to me very carefully, she said, stepping down from the toilet. In about 30 seconds, those men are going to come through that door. When they do, I want you to tell them you haven't seen me. Tell them you've been here alone all night doing laundry, trying to keep busy because you can't sleep. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving me. You're giving me a chance to get help. What help? She pulled out the black phone again and showed me the screen. I sent a message when we first got here. Help is coming, but they need time to get into position. How much time? I don't know. But I need you to buy us whatever time you can. The front door of the laundromat chimed as someone entered. Through the thin bathroom door, we could hear footsteps approaching. Promise me, Mom whispered urgently. Whatever happens, don't let them know we were together. Before I could respond, she pushed open the window. Apparently it wasn't painted shut after all, just stuck, and boosted herself up and through. I heard her drop to the ground outside just as someone knocked on the bathroom door. Occupied. I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Miss Thompson? This is David Sterling. Sterling studied my face for a long moment, then nodded to his partner, who had been searching the rest of the laundromat. The partner shook his head, no sign of Mom. Miss Thompson, if anyone does contact you claiming to be your mother, it's very important that you call me immediately. Such a person would be extremely dangerous, possibly mentally unstable. Do you understand? I guess. But I really don't understand why you're asking. Just a precaution. We want to make sure you're safe. After they left, I waited 15 minutes before leaving the laundromat myself. I walked back toward our neighborhood, taking a circuitous route through side streets, watching for any sign of surveillance. The black SUV was gone, but I had no way of knowing if they had given up or simply changed tactics. When I finally made it back to our street, I was shocked to see our house dark and apparently empty. The intruders were gone, but so was any sign of Mom. I didn't dare go inside. For all I knew, they had left someone behind to watch for my return. Instead, I went to the park across the street and sat on a bench where I could see the house. And waited. At dawn, a jogger approached the park. As he got closer, I realized it was a woman in running gear, and she was heading straight for my bench. "Rachel Thompson?" she asked, barely breathing hard despite her supposed jog. I nodded warily. "I'm Agent Sarah Chun, FBI. Your mother asked me to find you." She sat beside me on the bench and pulled out a badge that looked genuine. "Your mother is safe, but we need to move quickly. There are people looking for both of you, and they're not going to give up." "Are you the help she called for?" "Part of it. Your mother has been working with us for the past 6 months, helping us build a case against Meridian Consulting and its associates." I felt a wave of relief, mixed with confusion. So, she really was working with the FBI?
She was.
But the people who took her into protective custody weren't FBI. They were working for the same criminal organization she was trying to expose. Agent Chin looked around the park, checking for anyone who might be watching us. "Your mother discovered that Meridian was being used to launder money stolen from defense contracts. Millions of dollars that should have gone to equipment for our troops was being diverted to private accounts."
She told me some of this.
But why did they fake her death? Because they needed her to disappear, but they also needed to know what evidence she had and where she'd hidden it. Killing her outright risked having that evidence surface automatically. By faking her death and keeping her alive in custody, they thought they could eventually get her to reveal everything. But she escaped. She escaped because she's smarter than they gave her credit for. And more resourceful. Agent Chin almost smiled. "Your mother has quite a background, Rachel. She wasn't always a small-town librarian." "What do you mean?" 25 years ago, your mother was one of our best intelligence analysts. She left the agency when she got married, wanting a normal life for her family. But some skills never fade. I thought about how calmly Mom had handled our escape from the house, how she'd known exactly who to call and what to say. She's been trained for this. Extensively. Which is why she survived in that safe house long enough to escape, and why she's managed to stay hidden until now. Where is she? Somewhere safe. But Rachel, I need you to understand something. The people we're dealing with aren't going to stop. They've already invested too much in this cover-up to walk away now. What do you mean? Agent Chin was quiet for a moment, watching a dog walker make his way across the park. Yesterday's funeral wasn't entirely fake. There was someone in that casket. My blood turned to ice. Who? A woman named Jennifer Martinez. She was an accountant who worked for one of Meridian's shell companies. She discovered the same irregularities your mother found, but she wasn't careful enough about who she talked to. They killed her and used her death to provide cover for your mother's disappearance. 2 birds with 1 stone. Eliminate a witness and make another one disappear. I felt sick. So, I buried someone, just not who I thought. I'm sorry. I know this is difficult to process. What happens now? Now we finish what your mother started. We have most of the evidence we need to bring down the entire network, but we need your mother's testimony to tie it all together. And then what? We go back to our normal lives? Agent Chen's expression was sympathetic but realistic. Rachel, after what's happened, I'm not sure normal is an option anymore. These people have long memories and longer reach. We can offer witness protection, new identities, a chance to start over somewhere safe. You're talking about disappearing forever. I'm talking about staying alive. A car pulled up to the curb near the park, a nondescript sedan with government plates. Agent Chin stood up. That's our ride. Your mother is waiting. As we walked toward the car, I thought about everything I'd be leaving behind. My job, my apartment in the city, my friends, the life I'd spent 26 years building. But then I thought about Mom, alone and hunted, and I knew there wasn't really a choice to make. The safe house was a ranch-style home in a suburban development 30 miles outside of town. From the outside, it looked completely ordinary, but I noticed the subtle security measures. Cameras disguised as decorative elements, reinforced doors, windows that were probably bulletproof. Mom was waiting in the living room, and when she saw me, she broke down crying for the first time since this whole nightmare began. I held her while she sobbed, feeling her fear and relief and guilt all mixed together. I'm so sorry, she whispered against my shoulder. I never wanted you to be part of this. I was already part of it the moment I was born, your daughter, I said. We'll figure it out together. Over the next few hours, Agent Chen and her colleagues laid out the full scope of the investigation. Meridian Consulting was the tip of the iceberg, a network of companies and individuals that had been systematically stealing from defense contracts for years. The money had funded everything from luxury yachts to offshore real estate to political campaigns. Your mother's evidence is the key to proving criminal intent, Agent Chen explained. Without it, we can prove financial irregularities, but we can't prove conspiracy to defraud the government. What about the people who took her? I asked. Sterling and his associates. They were hired muscle, essentially. The real power behind this operation sits in corporate boardrooms and government offices. Mom spoke up for the first time in an hour. How many people are we talking about? Dozens. Senators, defense contractors, corporate executives. People with enough power to make problems disappear. People like us, I said. Exactly. The discussion was interrupted by Agent Chen's phone buzzing. She answered it, listened for a moment, then hung up with a grim expression. They found the safe house in Virginia where your mother was held. 3 guards, all dead. Looks like someone wanted to eliminate any witnesses to what happened there. Mom went pale. They're cleaning house. Which means we're running out of time. If they're willing to kill their own people to cover this up, they won't hesitate to come after both of you. What do you need from us? I asked. Your mother's testimony in front of a grand jury. But first, we need to collect the rest of the evidence she hid. Mom nodded slowly. Most of it is in a safety deposit box in the city. But getting there means exposing ourselves. We'll have protection. A full tactical team. These people have proven they can get to anyone, anywhere, Mom said. What makes you think a tactical team will be enough? Agent Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because this time, we're going to use their own tactics against them. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to hide from Meridian's people, we were going to let them find us, but on our terms, in a place of our choosing, with the entire encounter recorded and broadcast live. They want to silence you, Agent Chen explained. We're going to give them the opportunity to try, but in a way that exposes them completely. The location was the steps of the federal courthouse in the city during the lunch hour when the area would be crowded with people and media. Mom would approach the building publicly, making no attempt to hide her identity, while dozens of undercover agents and hidden cameras captured everything that happened next. If they try to take me in broad daylight, in front of witnesses, it proves they're desperate, Mom said. And desperate people make mistakes. And if they don't try? Then I walk into that courthouse and deliver my testimony. Either way, the truth comes out. The morning of the plan, I almost lost my nerve. Mom and I were in a hotel room downtown, watching the news coverage of what the media was calling the largest financial fraud investigation in decades. Meridian Consulting was already under federal investigation, but without Mom's testimony, the case was mostly circumstantial. I could testify instead. I offered. Tell them what I found in your desk, what Sterling said to me. Mom shook her head. You're a secondary witness. I'm the one who saw the transactions, who has the detailed knowledge of how the scheme worked. You're also the one they want dead. Which is why this has to work. At 11:30 a.m., we left the hotel and walked the 6 blocks to the courthouse. The streets were busy with normal downtown foot traffic, but I noticed the subtle signs of the FBI's presence. Agents posing as street vendors, construction workers who seemed more interested in watching the crowd than working, tourists with expensive cameras pointed in our direction. Mom walked calmly beside me, but I could feel the tension radiating from her body. 25 years of quiet suburban life, and here she was, walking into what could easily become a war zone. Whatever happens, she said quietly, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. These past few days, you've been braver than I ever expected. I learned from the best. We were still 2 blocks from the courthouse when I spotted them. 2 men in dark suits, walking parallel to us on the opposite side of the street. One of them was Sterling. They're here, I murmured. I see them. More figures appeared in the crowd around us, people who moved with too much purpose, who kept their hands inside their jackets, who spoke into hidden microphones. The FBI had expected this, but the sheer number of Meridian's people was overwhelming. Rachel. Mom stopped walking and turned to face me. I need you to do something for me.
What?
I need you to walk away.
Right now.
Go into that coffee shop behind us and stay there until this is over. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving me. You're making sure that whatever happens here, someone survives to tell the story. Before I could argue, Sterling and his partner crossed the street and approached us. But instead of trying to grab Mom or threaten us, Sterling simply walked up and extended his hand as if greeting an old friend. Margaret, he said, using the false identity we'd found in Mom's desk. It's good to see you again. Mom didn't take his hand. I wish I could say the same, David. You've caused quite a stir, disappearing from protective custody like that. We were worried about you. Were you? Is that why you sent armed men to search my house in the middle of the night? Sterling's smile never wavered, but I could see Agent Chen and her team closing in from multiple directions. The entire conversation was being recorded by at least a dozen different devices. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Sterling said. Why don't we go somewhere private and discuss this calmly? I think we should discuss it right here, in public, where everyone can hear. Margaret, you're making this more difficult than it needs to be. My name is Patricia Thompson, and I'm here to deliver evidence of massive fraud to the federal authorities. Evidence that you and your associates have tried very hard to suppress. Sterling's composure finally cracked. His hand moved toward his jacket, but before he could draw whatever weapon he was carrying, Agent Chen appeared behind him with her gun drawn. FBI. Nobody move. What followed was controlled chaos. Sterling and his associates were surrounded and arrested within minutes, while Mom and I were hustled into the courthouse by a phalanx of federal marshals. The media, drawn by the commotion, captured everything. The arrests, Mom's identity, and her brief statement that she was a witness in a major federal investigation. By evening, the story was national news. Mom's resurrection became a symbol of government corruption exposed and justice served. The evidence she provided led to indictments of 37 people, including 2 senators and the CEO of one of the country's largest defense contractors. But victory came with a price. Even with most of the conspirators in custody, Agent Chen made it clear that we couldn't return to our old lives. There are too many people with too much to lose, she explained. You'll always be targets. The Witness Protection Program offered us new identities in a small town in Oregon. Mom would become a librarian again, using her real skills but with a fabricated background. I would start over as a marketing coordinator for a local nonprofit. It's not ideal, Agent Chen admitted, but it's safe. Mom and I talked about it for hours before making our decision. Leave everything behind. Our home, our memories, our very identities, for the chance at a peaceful life somewhere else. I've already lost you once, I told her. I'm not losing you again, no matter where we have to go. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Portland, reading about the sentencing of the last Meridian conspirator, when my phone rang. It was Mom, or rather, it was Carol Patterson, which was her new name. How was your first day at the new job? She asked.
Good.
Strange, but good.
How about you?
Are you settling in at the library? It's nice to be around books again. And the people here are kind. Any regrets? There was a pause. About exposing the corruption? Never. About the cost? Sometimes. But Rachel, or should I say, Sarah, I want you to know something.
What?
These past 6 months, getting to know you again, really know you, not just as my daughter, but as the strong, brave woman you've become, it's been worth everything we've been through. I smiled, watching the rain streak down the coffee shop window. I love you too, Mom. I love you too. And Rachel? Yeah. Tomorrow is Sunday. Would you like to come over for dinner? I'm making that casserole you used to love when you were little. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. After I hung up, I sat for a while thinking about second chances and the price of truth. We'd lost our old lives, but we'd gained something more precious, the knowledge that when everything fell apart, we'd chosen to stand together. Outside, the Oregon rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean for another day. In a few hours, I'd drive to Mom's new house, where we'd share a meal and talk about our new lives, our new identities, our new hopes for the future. We'd buried the past, the real past, with all its secrets and lies, and emerged as different people in a different place. But the love between us, the bond that had survived death certificates and fake funerals and midnight escapes, remained exactly the same. Some things, I'd learned, are too strong to be destroyed by anything the world can throw at them. Even death. Would you sacrifice everything you've ever known to protect the person you love most, even if it meant living a lie for the rest of your life? Hit that like button if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, and subscribe for more tales of family secrets that change everything.